Good morning. Welcome to our Coffee with the Legislators. My name is Michael Held. I will serve as the moderator this morning. These are organized by the Governmental Affairs Committee of the Huron Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Refreshments were provided by the South Dakota Farmers Union. I would ask you to please check your cell phones and put them on silent or turn them off so you don't disrupt our meeting this morning. We are happy to have with us our three legislators from District 22. On my right, Senator Brandon Whiff, and on my left, Representative Lana Greenfield and Representative Kevin Van Diepen. Want to recognize and thank the media, the Huron Plainsman, Performance Radio. Remind you that you can view this forum on HuronSD.com. Also want to recognize we have several members of the Governmental Affairs Committee with us this morning. If they would just raise their hand, serve on the committee. Jerry Kaufman has cards. If you'd rather write your question down on a card, raise your hand. He'll get you a card and a pen and you can turn them to us. Also want to recognize and thank the young lady who put the refreshments together and got everything organized, Peyton Shukard. Peyton is the Huron gal that started with the Chamber in January. She's the Program and Events Director for the Huron Chamber and Visitors Bureau. We will begin with 3 minutes of opening comments from each of the legislators. Then we will get to your questions. You can either write it on a card or you can come to the podium and state your name and where you live. And I would remind you that we're here to listen to the legislators. So I will not permit any lengthy speeches or anything like that from the podium. A couple of opening comments is appropriate, but then please ask your question. So we'll begin with opening comments, and we'll start with Senator Brandon Whiff. Brandon?
Thank you, Mike. As he said, Brandon Whiff. I live up Lake Byron. Thanks for the flexibility in scheduling this as well. The last day of session was my birthday, and I wanted to take off on a little trip with the family right after that, and so I'm appreciative of everybody getting together here. It's actually kind of nice that we waited because we've got clarity now on what bills have been vetoed. We go back on Monday to consider those. My school lunch bill got signed by the governor yesterday. I'm pretty happy about that. It was a little coy for a while on what he planned to do with that, but I'm very appreciative to the governor for coming along and helping us get that done. For us to get that kind of a bill through this legislature was a lot of people told me it can't be done, which is, I'm the wrong kind of person to say that to. Usually if you tell me something can't be done, then I'm going to just try even harder. So very, very happy about that. We will go back on Monday. We've got 2 vetoes that are on the House side to consider. If they have enough votes to override them, they'll send them to the Senate side. One of them dealt with cell-cultured meat, which the governor did a compromise on, and we passed a bill already, so I'll be pretty surprised if there's really any much of a try to override that one, since that issue kind of got dealt with. The other one dealt with in-home healthcare agencies. I voted for the bill. Basically, it was just to get background checks done on an individual from that's coming into your house, into the house of an elderly person, for instance. They're in a vulnerable spot, and so you'd like to know who they are, if they've got a criminal record and all that. Currently, there are certain types of healthcare organizations or certain types of agencies that send them in that they don't have to do this background check. I thought that was important, so I voted for the bill. The governor would like to see it done a little differently, and that's why he vetoed it. So I think if they're not able to override that, we'll be taking another look at that issue next year with some legislation maybe that is, crafted over the summer. So I guess with that, I will turn it over to one of my colleagues from the House.
Thank you, Senator. And I forgot to mention, we have Dr. Signoff here in the front row, and he's keeping time for us this morning. And we're not real strict on that, but we do hesitate to let someone go on and on. With that, we are going to turn to Representative Lana Greenfield. Lana?
Sure. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here on this sunshiny yet windy day. Appreciate that. I think Senator Whiff covered pretty well what we're going to be doing on Veto Day. We'll be gathering at 1 o'clock that day. It was a busy week for me. Monday, I went down to the Southeast Area Tech in Sioux Falls, and we did a bill signing for the $6 million that we voted on to pass for the expansion of their welding program. They had 23 spots and they need 80. I didn't know until I got down there that they also bring the Department of Corrections people over there, and they're a part of the welding program. And so what they're going to do is expand to 80 spots, and then they'll have the students on one area and the docs on the other side. I asked if it was very successful as far as a program and getting people out and working. He said we had, the last group, I think he said they had one business come in and say they would take all the Department of Corrections people and use them in their business. So I thought that was a very good thing. Tuesday, I went to the James Valley Federation of Women meeting in Spink County, and we talked about the Republican dinner that's going to be coming up there on April 16th, and everybody's invited. We also listened to one of the AG candidates at that meeting, and what his vision is for his office if he gets elected. We did, the three of us going back, did a wrap-up session at the Women's Federation meeting down here, and we also discussed the Lincoln Day dinner here as well on April 9th, and I believe that starts, help me out, Kevin, is it 5 o'clock? Social, something like that, and there'll be a dinner and then a live and silent auction. Wednesday, my husband and I went to attend a meeting in Clark on scams and frauds that are becoming more and more prevalent in the area. And there was Chief of Police, Jeremy Wellnitz, and also the head of the fraud department from Dakota Bank that spoke to us. Yesterday was a highlight. We went to Aberdeen to Holgate School for a bill signing with the governor, 1017 and 1262, which I've talked to you about before, the Children's Therapeutic Center that's going to be coming into Aberdeen. My husband and I also drove over to the building that they're going to be using for it, and it seems to be the right size and the right fit. This week, Veto Day, Wednesday, I'll be talking with the Doland High School government class to kind of spark their interest and answer any questions they might have as far as becoming legislative pages this upcoming year. So, you know, we continue on, even though session is over, we do continue on with work in other areas. But again, thank you for being here, and I will turn this over to Representative Van Diepen.
Thank you, Representative Greenfield and Mr. Held. Thank you all for being here. A month after session, it seems like we slowed down yet. When you listen to Representative Greenfield, she's absolutely correct. Senator Whiff and I were in Brookings, I believe it was Thursday night. We met with the STSU Collegiate Farmers Union Club. They wanted to talk about ag legislation, some of the bills that we have, other things that affect the public education system, be it from K through 12 or the post-secondary, everybody involved. So we had a good conversation with them, trying to get back into normal life, driving school bus part-time. So if you see me in a bus, you can wave at me. It seems like I'm in high demand there. Our school district needs plenty of us. Next week is going to be an interesting week for 2 vetoes. My personal feeling is we don't have enough votes for either of the bills that got vetoed by the governor. Looking at it, it was 45 to 22 on the cell culture protein to pass it. That's the one the governor vetoed. They need 47. I don't think there's a chance that they're gonna override it anyway because he had another bill that put a 5-year moratorium on it. The other was on the licensure of non-medical home care, and we got that through 41 to 25, so we're 6 votes shy of overriding the governor's veto on that one as it stands. That one I think is probably more important than anything that I've seen. Understanding the bill, I read it again this morning. The purpose of the bill to protect our vulnerable seniors by just doing a simple background check. But the bill itself is something that I was very passionate about getting through when the representative brought it. So I'll continue to beat that drum, but look forward to any questions you have for us. We'll try to answer what we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're ready for your questions. Who would like to ask the first question? Well, then I guess we won't be here very long. Anybody have a question? Come on, Ben. Ben is always good for a question.
Ben Chase from the Hero Paper, and a lot of congratulations on getting that bill through.
Thank you.
I talked with you, I talked with you guys, talked during the Beetle County Women about how that particular issue has directly affected my family. Our defunding of youth mental health has, in this state, has significantly affected my family. My question is, that's kind of that crack in the door. Do you believe that there's any appetite for further youth mental health funding moving forward?
Thank you, and we take these on a voluntary basis, whichever legislator wants to start.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll begin because he was talking about the therapeutic center, and what we would like to see, or what I would like to see, is to get this program on the ground. And then, of course, things are not going to happen in 5 minutes, even though we like them to. And then later on, and I can't set forth a date or a year, but I would like to see it expand as kind of a branch over into probably in this area or south of here, and again, expand into, take in more counties. It's open and available right now to every county, but of course, there's the driving distance. And so far, though, we've had people express interest up to 70 miles surrounding areas. So Ben, I'm hoping that we could do that, because these behaviors just don't go away, and then they grow and they expand and they're catchy, and then we see our prison become.
Yeah, I agree. I can only speak for myself, but I would have appetite for that. I'll point out, we have one of these in Sioux Falls and Rapid City. Let's think about our license plate numbers. Now we did Aberdeen, that's 3, so who's 4? I don't know that it will be here, but we have been moving kind of that way, and I think I heard plenty of stories from Lanai, from Representative Greenfield here about the need for this, and agree that if we can get kids off on a better path, that it will save us money in the long run on prison population, really. That's something we got to think about. So, yes would be the short answer.
Well, Ben, what I do is I refer back to the juvenile justice reform that we had, and that was the actual beginning of the process to get us to the point that we're at right now. We thought that we could just leave our children without getting them the help that they need. Sometimes that means that you need to be placed somewhere to get the help you need to protect them and everybody else that's around them in the schools. When Representative Greenfield brought this bill and explained it, it made perfect sense. We're going to get them the help that they need, and we're going to protect them and educate them, and we're also going to make it so that the other kids can be educated at the same time. So we've lost track of what we should be doing in society. Is there an appetite? There's always an appetite. It's just finding the funding for it. But I think that this is a great place to start. This will set an example of what we need to do to get back on the right track in the future. And I think if this is and I'm sure it will be a very well received building up there in the facility and the educators that use it. I think by doing that, it will show everybody else that we need more of these. We need to help our kids, which are our future, and if we can't protect even the ones with mental health issues, we're failing them and the regular people in the regular school district that don't have these issues. So we need to fund it, we just need to figure out a way to do that.
Thank you. Who would like to ask a question? Well, then, as chairman, I'm going to take the prerogative of asking a question. Let's talk about the two property tax relief bills. Where the money comes from, how the money's distributed, what the impact will be on owner-occupied homeowners with the action that this legislative session took.
Well, I'll start this one because I was probably the only one of the three of us that voted no on both. When I looked at the governor's bill, the day that we voted on it on the House floor, and the governor's bill is a county can opt into a 0.5% sales tax increase for that county only. That money has to be sent specifically to owner-occupied sale or property tax relief. So as I listened to testimony, and I can tell you in 2 years, I've never switched my vote on the floor. This was the one that I did it on. And the reason goes down to Minnehaha County is gonna opt into this. I have no doubt that they will opt into this 0.5%. So the 0.5% then goes to owner-occupied tax relief in Minnehaha County. So any of us that go to Sioux Falls, be it for a basketball game, shopping, anything else, we are gonna pay property tax relief for that county. To me, it makes no sense that I'm paying someone else's property tax. They built their house, they understood what the taxes were gonna be, and they should be willing to pay the property tax that they have. It's not a tax problem in my mind, it's an assessment problem. You know, they say their property assessments have gone way up. I looked at mine over the last 10 years. They've been real close, up and down, no big jumps. 2020, it went up probably the most. So the governor's 0.5% doesn't make sense to me. The next one, on 245, Senate Bill 245, the sales tax goes from 4.2% to 4.5%. That's gonna happen no matter what, because there's a bill in the Senate and it died to stop it at 4.2. So sales tax is going 4.2 to 4.5. So the bill that passed, that I voted against, said that the entirety of that 0.3% has to go to owner-occupied property tax relief. So if you don't own your house, if you're renting your house, you're gonna pay for my property taxes with the 0.3%. Anything you buy as a renter, you're gonna relieve anybody that has owner-occupied property taxes. They're also gonna take $60 million to start in January out of the reserves and fund that into this bill so your property tax relief starts January 1st. So we're gonna take $110 million every year of the sales tax, that's what it'll generate, 0.3, and we're gonna give that to owner-occupied. Not thinking about, like I said, the renters, the people that can't afford to buy a house, you know. So we had an amendment to it that I was gonna support, which would have held half of it back. We would have still given $60 million in property tax relief. The other $50 million we could have used for education or any other funding. It would have stayed in the general budget for things that we could have used it for. When we gave our big three, as we call it, school, state employees, and Medicare people, 1.4% this year. If we would withhold $50 million, it costs $25 million for every percent that we give those three a raise. If we withheld that $50 million on top of our 1.4%, we could have given all of our employees, our educators, and our Medicare people the 3% that we told them years ago that we were gonna do, and we haven't done it. So I voted no on both those bills, and I have no problem explaining.
Representative Van Diepen, I also was in favor of the amendment, but that didn't pass. And I did go ahead and vote for the bills. One of the main reasons that I voted for this property tax relief is we keep hearing, that people are being taxed out of their homes. Well, this is happening in the big counties, and it's become a real problem. You buy a house for $250,000, all of a sudden, a few years down the road, it's worth $800,000, and you've got to pay the taxes on the $800,000. So it was a problem, but beyond that, I'm tired of hearing about property taxes. And it seems like, and I think Senator White would probably agree with me that during legislative session, it's been talked about several times in the past, and there's been several summer studies at taxpayer expense to try to iron out the problem, and everything sort of ends up being a shift. And so we had 40 bills this year out there. That just showed you how convoluted it is and difficult. And I thought, well, let's try to at least make something in the right direction. Let's make a step. Or for sure somebody's going to bring up another summer study, and I'm not interested in seeing the taxpayers have to suffer that expense when they set up a committee and they pay them per diem and so on and so forth to try to bat out an issue which seemingly has been rather impossible. And again, this will address maybe the needs of some of the big counties so that they feel that they're at least getting some tax relief, but every owner occupied in the state will get some type of a rebate with the combination of the two. So that's where I stand on it. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. Agree with Representative Greenfield. We better not hear about this issue as much now that we've addressed it a couple of different ways. So the governor's bill, they were both Senate bills, but actually the governor's bill, Senate Bill 96, was the only one that the Senate actually saw first. Senate Bill 245 was, we basically pass out what's called a vehicle bill. It's just an empty shell of a bill over to the House. And then kind of in the last 2 weeks of session, they inserted all this language in there and passed it and sent it back to us. So kind of a different situation. But, I told the governor, he was on the third floor for both of these bills, which is not a common occurrence. He's not there every day in the legislative. On the third floor is where the Senate and the House chambers are. But they were working these bills, and so on Senate Bill 96, that's the one with the 0.5% that a county may or may not opt into. I told him, I'm not getting a huge earful from my constituents on property taxes. As we've said, it's the Black Hills where people moved in. A lot of retirees are moving in during and after COVID. Sioux Falls, it's because that's where certain types of jobs are, unfortunately. And we as a community get hurt on that somewhat. There was a lot of, I would say, complaining from, say, Sioux Falls. They want us to run our school boards different because of a couple of problems that they might have, places where they are experiencing these issues. And if we don't put the fire out there, pretty soon they're coming for rural. They're going to figure out there's more of them than us, and they can stick it to rural South Dakota. Just go to Nebraska and ask a farmer there what they pay in property taxes in Nebraska. It's insane, and it's because they figured out years ago, wow, there's way more of us in the city than there are in the country, and we can kind of have our way. So I wanted to do a targeted thing. I was assured at that point that was the bill that the governor was going to sign. And then in the last couple weeks, well, basically when his bill passed out of the Senate, went to the House, it ran into a few problems. And some deals had to be made to keep that alive, and it involved the inclusion of this other stuff. The 4.2 to 4.3% sales tax I could live with. There was actually some bills on the Senate side that dealt with those in a piecemeal fashion, and I voted for those. It was the $56 million in state money going directly to essentially buying down property taxes that I struggled with, especially when we heard about how tight money was all year long. A lot of my Senate colleagues that voted for that, they took a picture with the governor signing that bill and then marched right upstairs the same day and voted against the state budget because it spent too much money. Same exact people. can't really explain it. But, so that was the piece of that I found difficult to support and why I couldn't quite get there on that. But I'm happy that we have delivered enough relief that, as I started off saying, I think we shouldn't have to hear about this issue. We can focus on some other statewide problems instead of things that are specific just to the bigger cities in our state.
Thank you, good information. Question written on a card here wants to go back to the veto item that you'll be dealing with. What are the governor's reasons for not supporting background checks for home health care people? Who wants to tackle that?
So that would be HB 1138. And I read the letter that the governor wrote. We all got a copy of the letter. And I'm still confused because he said that an average person going into a house is gonna have a background check. Well, the way I read the bill, doesn't mean an average person going into a house needs a background check. What it means is if you read the specifics of it, it says that you have to, non-medical home care services, you have to have 2 or more of the following to be considered non-medical home care services. Assist with bathing, dressing, eating, personal grooming or toileting, assistance with self-administration of medications, companionship, housekeeping or assistance with household chores, meal prep, other routine daily or activities. Well, I will tell you that if you have a vulnerable senior in a house that needs to call someone into their house to help them, they don't know if this person's good or not. And all we're doing is protecting this person. And the governor said that this bill is too broad. Knowing the representative that worked on this bill, it was bigger than this before, and she went to the Department of Health, and they said, well, if you change this, we'll support it. So she changed it. She worked with the Department of Health. As soon as it was done, they came at it again and went to the governor and said, oh, it's a bad bill, we gotta get rid of it. They're gonna charge $100 every year. Well, it doesn't say that either. What it says is they can create a rule in the Department of Health to charge up to $100. They could charge you $1 if they wanted to. All that they have to do is take, there's 8 hours of training involved, so they'll send a certificate saying that you had a background check, 8 hours of training, and you have insurance with your fee to the Department of Health. All they have to do is say, yep, they met the criteria and it's done. In the beginning, they thought they needed 3 full-time employees, which they don't need. When I read the governor's letter compared to this, veto it, because we're trying to help our elderly. When I read it, like I said, it's 2 different things to me. His letter that he wrote compared to what the bill actually says contradict each other. So I truly don't understand why he vetoed the thing.
I thank you for the question. I think that when the governor was, of course, he's not the jack of all trades, so he has his policy people each look at this and his department people. And I think that the department, maybe the health department, maybe didn't like the bill, because my seatmate was the one that brought forth this bill in the first place. And when she went and worked with the health department, they looked at it and said, it's too specific. That's not going to work. And so then, as Representative Van Diepen said, she went and revisited the whole issue and broadened it out a little bit and thought that everything was under the umbrella, but obviously it was not. And so they, again, opposed it. I'm guessing that, anytime you see that, well, it's going to take a bunch of extra people to do this, I think it's important to go the extra mile. We've all had extra duties to be assigned in the teaching world. And I don't think that it would have been so much trouble or add to the department to have this, because there's not going to be tons and tons that are not already licensed. But there's just that one person out there, if they intend to do people harm, what are they going to do? They're going to prey upon vulnerable people. So I think that he just got some bad advice. And they probably didn't want to have to handle it, didn't want to handle the licensure. So they rained on the parade, shall we say, and that was it. So we'll see. But I really believe, as Representative Van Diepen said at the beginning, I don't think we have enough votes to override it. And the governor was very gracious in his letter to say, let's bring it back next year and let's get some language in it that everybody can work with. So I don't know how it's going to end up come Monday. And that Senate, they're always a tough sell. So even if we overrode it, I'm not sure what they'd do. They'd probably all get in their cars and leave before the vote came down. Thank you.
I don't remember how many vote. I don't think we had 24, but was it 20? I thought that was a 20 vote deal, so we would have to pick up some additional. Echo what you heard there. I felt it was a little disingenuous, the opposition on the bill. So all of my committees, at Monday through Friday, they started at 10 a.m. So I had this unique opportunity to go to the Capitol and sit at my desk. I'd usually be there 8:30, and basically the floor is open so people can come through and talk to you, including people from the executive branch. The Health and Human Services came through on this bill. When the bill started, they didn't like it because it was too burdensome on them. So the prime sponsor changed it, and then they were opposed to it because it didn't do enough. That's what the woman came to my desk and said. Well, we just don't think we're going to protect enough people with a background check. I'm like, well, it can't possibly hurt. And I pushed back on what she was saying pretty strongly, but had a good conversation. Yeah, they were opposed to it because it didn't do enough. And then in his veto letter, he says, I'm vetoing it because it casts too wide a net, was the phrase he used. And so I don't even know that they've decided why they're opposed to it. A couple reasons why doing a simple background check just makes sense. Are you going to prevent all bad things from happening? No. But it certainly doesn't hurt to know who these people are when they're dealing with either a senior person, somebody with some disabilities. They're vulnerable people. There's no eyes on the situation. This is just one fairly easy thing that we can do. And then you've got this agency that basically, under the bill, would have attested to the state that we did a background check on this person before we placed them in the home. Well, if, let's say the worst does happen and you end up in court, at least then that agency can't say, well, we had no idea because, well, you said you did the background check. Where's the background check? And if they can't produce that, that means they were lying. It seemed like a common sense bill. It still seems like a common sense bill. I hope we're back next year with, I guess, something that everybody can live with. Don't know if it'll be us as legislators or who's going to be in the executive branch, but we've got to do a little more to protect vulnerable people on this.
I just wanted to add something. There is something to be said. When we're legislating, we're also learning. And I think this is a good learning curve right here that sometimes we might look in the newspaper. Okay, we will find somebody to help out grandma. We don't want to go through an agency. They might charge us too much. So let's look and see what the newspaper says. And that's how we end up in this kind of a kerfuffle, I think. So be careful. Go with the reliable. Check with your hospitals. Check with your nursing homes and see if they can put forth some type of a credible service to take care of our loved ones.
Just on a personal note, some of you know I spent many years coaching youth baseball, Little League, Teener, American Legion. All of them do background checks before you can be hired on as a coach at any of those levels. Yes, sir, you have a question? Please come to the podium, state your name and where you live.
Hi, my name's Charlie Bragg. I live here on Huron. And I'm thinking about becoming a teacher in the future, but because of a lot of cuts that have been happening to the Department of Education, I'm worried that I'm just not going to be able to make enough money. Do you know if there's any way you can make it more feasible for people like me who want to become a teacher?
Well, yeah, Lana absolutely should start this one.
Well,
Thank
I think that's a really good question, Charlie. And, I'm biased, but I think teaching is one of the best gigs in the state. And I'd be proud to say that because you get to kind of stay young in the profession because you're always around young people. You get to understand what kids are thinking. You don't ever have to beg for your weekends for free unless you're a coach. That's your own deal. And you certainly don't have to beg for your holidays because they're off. And as far as the teacher cuts, I think we've got this pathway now that we have been seeing in the last couple of years, and that allows people that are interested in teaching to get a certain amount of money as credit toward their education. And a lot of them that are started out as paraprofessionals, well, they figured as long as they were there all day long, they might as well work toward their degree and become a teacher. And so I think that's good. I don't, we hear about the bad things all the time, like maybe the cuts in teachers. Well, that there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, including the opt-outs and all the demands that are placed on schools and the insurance costs of the schools alone and so on and so forth. As far as the state level, we've given up to 7% sometimes, which goes above and beyond what is relied or asked of us. And then we, this year, have gone below. And I always ask people, what do you think is a fair wage for a teacher? And, well, they don't know. Maybe 45,000. Well, we do start teachers out at 45,000 now by law. We're supposed to do that. The average, I believe, in our state is somewhere around 56,000, and plus your benefits and so on. So when you're looking at contract of 175, 180 days. That's not bad for a half year's work. You go above and beyond that, of course. As a teacher, you want to put in extra hours, but that's on you. But I can't say enough good things about the world of teaching. It's very rewarding. And as an English teacher, actually, I got to know the kids' hearts because I would assign them a lot of essay questions, papers, and I didn't care if I had to sit up till 12 o'clock at night and go through them. They always got them back the next day. The math teacher, was at a disadvantage because all they dealt with is numbers, but I got to know the kids inside. So if you have any interest at all, for sure, make sure that you go for it. Thank you. Sorry for the long answer.
No, that's she's absolutely right. The opportunity to invest in kids is one of the most special things, I think, for all of us as legislators, and for you to make your career in that would be amazing. I have some reasons for hope. We started out with a proposal of 0% increase for K-12, and we were able to get to 1.4% in a difficult budget year. We had a bill for Atlanta's special school up in Aberdeen. We were able to get that through. The school lunch bill that I mentioned earlier, we did some things that show that even though it felt like we had a constant attack on public ed and education in general this year, that we were able to beat a lot of that back, and we were actually still able to do things that show that we prioritize education. Your question was specifically about teacher pay, and I was thinking about this earlier when the conversation about the new Aberdeen school was coming in. When I was in school, we had the fear of the Lord in us, and the teachers probably weren't allowed to hit us, but I didn't know that. Nobody told me that as a kid, so I assumed don't act up, okay? And we have lost a little bit of that, and you think, well, why don't the kids respect teachers? Well, kids don't have to get very old before they start to understand money, okay? They see my clothes aren't as nice as this other kid's, or that they start to understand that about society a lot quicker than I think we see. And if they see us paying teachers so little, it says that we as a society don't respect them. So why would the kids get any different message? So to every extent we can, we've got to make sure that we need to climb the league tables in teacher pay in the country. We need to show that we back them up in every way that we can, because that will start to be noticed even by kids that are so young you wouldn't think they'd pick up on it. So.
Well, education, what a topic that is. We had meeting after meeting, and education took a beating all year long. Didn't matter what we were talking about, our education system was always on the floor, always taking a beating. Like I explained earlier with the property tax bill, we could have had an extra $50 million to help our educators get more money. It would have funded some of that. But there's a certain group that is anti-education. You know, when they talk on the floor, you can tell that they're against education because they make it a personal issue. And they're also the ones that did not want to take that extra money and put it towards education. Education, in my mind, is our future. Our youth are our future in South Dakota. And if we can't find the money, instead of those of us who've been around long enough to pay property taxes, if we can't say, okay, let's just keep that $50 million and put it towards the education, our future of our society. But they don't want to do that. So I applaud you if you want to be an educator. And the three of us, I will tell you, will keep fighting all year long. That's what we've done. We will fight for not just the district, but for education and what is actually right.
Go ahead. Lana always has to get the last word.
Ask my husband.
I see there's a hand in the audience that agrees with that.
Put your hand down, it's not your turn to talk. No, I was going to say that you got to be really careful of what you read out there, too. This last week, case in point, and I'm sure Dr. Steinhoff knows what I'm going to be talking about. There was an article in KELOLAND whereas the Sioux Falls, it said that the Sioux Falls School District was going to hire a chef at $340,000 to $400,000 in order to meet some of these nutritional needs and stuff. Well, now two things came to my mind. Number one, I do have my cooking license, so, maybe that sounded good to me. But number two, the reason that I noticed it in the first place is one of the senators from out West River had it on her site, so I went back and I looked at the article. Yep, there it was. So I contacted Dr. Jamie Knoll from Sioux Falls School District, and I said, tell me this isn't true. I'm hyperventilating over this whole deal. I went on. He said, no. He says, that's not true. He said, if we were looking at some new equipment and some supplies, budgetary items, and possibly hiring a cook. But he said, that's all in that big bundle. And so he says, that's not right. So then I called the news station and I said, you gotta make a change. You gotta get a hold of Dr. Knoll. You gotta put out this fire. It's causing a firestorm and I don't like it. And so we finally got them to retract the article, and I sent the retraction over to the senator that was concerned about it. And I didn't get any response from her, but I noticed it was still up on the site. So these are some of the things that, are misperceptions in education. And this is just one of them. And I think it teaches us all to really be watching the news, what goes out over the airwaves as well, to see what's being said that's true or what's being said that's false. And sometimes education really gets a bum rap.
Thank you. Do we have
Another written one, just forget that other one.
I'm sorry, Jim.
I had written a comment, but just,
Okay.
let's just forget that one.
Who else has a question from the floor? Come on, Mr. Kaufman.
Again, I'm often one to ask a question. Gary Kaufman from here. I follow up and don't need to turn this into a whole education forum, but talking about school funding, and the question was teacher pay. I'm going to direct it to the statute that talks about 3% or CPI, whichever is less. Okay, that is the statute. That is the law. And yes, sometimes it's been 7%. This year is 1.5. The law is there. What does it take for citizens to expect that law be followed? Or do you need to change the law? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I thought CPI was 1.4. this year, which is where we ended up. But I've also heard, well, this was from the same individual who was referenced by Representative Greenfield, and not always the most truthful when it comes to education, but she said we didn't meet our obligation. I thought we did. I thought 1.4 was CPI, so we did the bare minimum. I'm not, again, not thrilled with it, and to your point, in many cases in the past years, they just kind of, like, it's more of a goal. I don't know why it's not, honored. Again, very encouraged with the group of legislators we had to work with. Even this legislature didn't have the appetite for doing 0%. We were able to get where we were. It speaks a lot to the work that we were doing behind the scenes, honestly, to drag that along. Don't have a great. I hope to have better perspective on that in future years and understand why we're not taking that as seriously as we should. But I do think for this year we did meet CPI, which is just basically we're trying to keep up with inflation for what we did for K through 12, which was 1.4%.
My answer is pretty easy. The sales tax increase, we could have gotten to that point. It would have made sense, but that didn't pass.
The only thing I want to add is sometimes, instead of following the law, as you're big on doing, some people regard it as a suggestion, much the same as they look at a sign that says 55 miles an hour and slowing down in town, and they're going 70 because they decide it's just a suggestion because it doesn't fit their agendas. So, we see that we're going to have to try to, boost it next year, hopefully, and hopefully our sales and use tax won't be as flat as what it was in the middle of the year, so that we can do something more constructive. But I understand, I get it when you're talking about the law. Yes.
Thank you. We would have time for one more question. Come on forward.
Rich Bragg, I'm from Huron. Just wondering, so I'm the chair of the Development Corporation in town, so that's where my bias lies a little bit maybe in this question. But the past couple of years, when we saw a couple of things, for instance, the carbon pipeline, and then this year with data centers, both of those examples we've seen our legislation be what I would say in general could be considered anti-economic development. We've seen, the pipeline is probably going to skirt right along the edge of South Dakota if it happens and avoid our state. Data centers, similarly, a lot of those are looking at building right on our borders, but not being in South Dakota. So I know those are hot buttons, so you don't necessarily have to hit those topics because you've talked about those a lot. But in general, do you feel like there's a concern? Some of what is out there is that the state of South Dakota is gaining a reputation as being not friendly to business or not friendly to economic development. And do you have any concerns about that after the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'm concerned. Thanks for the question. We've lost billions in opportunities to our neighboring states. A couple data centers, like you mentioned, just on their side of the border. They're still going to hook up to the same power grid as us. So if energy is your concern, it's still a concern, but they're not paying any taxes into our jurisdiction. And I think, Representative Van Diepen threw this out at our Farmers Union meeting, but that was like $20 million a year between the property taxes and the sales tax on electricity that one of those generates. Does that mean it's a right fit for every location in every place? No. I commend the counties that are looking at doing zoning and things like that before a developer comes to your community and says, hey, we want to set up. Like, don't pass laws and regulations like when emotions are running high, do it before. And I'm disappointed that really our state wasn't putting laws in place on data centers, for instance, 7 to 10 years ago, because they've been building these things like gangbusters around the country. We're just kind of coming to the conversation now, and our lunch is half eaten. Broadly about economic development, we've gotten to a place where we need to regain the trust of a good chunk of the public in the process. And I can't fault certain individuals for having trepidations about about change, particularly some landowners that weren't treated very well on a carbon pipeline, or whether it's people that are local to a project they don't like. I'm completely understanding of that. What we've got to make sure we do as lawmakers is when we're talking to a developer that wants to come to the state, we got to make sure they understand the people here, and that you're not going to have success here if you don't treat people with respect. And so, like, my whole thing is we're going to do economic development, but we're going to keep doing it the right way. I think we're blessed to have a community here that has done it the right way. You know, we've used TIF financing, for instance, in Huron many times, and haven't had one blow up on us. You know, we've done it right. And so I'm able to talk to my lawmakers and say, we're a good example. Do what Huron's doing. We've got hotels that we wouldn't be getting if it wasn't for TIF. We've got the Peaceful Pines facility that my grandfather here in the second row just moved into. We would not have that in Huron if we didn't have those tools available to us. So keep telling the stories about how they work, and then that's how, when we address the public, talk about the things that work, and when we're talking to developers, tell them some of the cautionary tales about when it has gone badly, because we're, as legislators, we're still trying to pick up the pieces from some projects that went sideways in the last few years, and we're suffering with the results of that. And so we don't want to get a reputation as a state that we're not friendly to business. We want to keep increasing our tax base so that we don't have to increase the burden on the people that already live here. We can actually grow and maintain our way of life, and not go deeper into existing South Dakotans' pockets to do it. So.
Economic development, key phrase. Anybody that ever talks to me understands that economic development is one of the top priorities I have. The data centers I've studied for the last year and a half. I met with the power people. The data center was proposed in Toronto, Dual County, South Dakota. They would have gotten a huge tax exemption for the equipment on the inside of the building. And I think that would have been the sticking point. I think that we probably should have negotiated some different terms on what we were gonna give them to bring them to our state. They're already getting all these breaks in other states. But each year, they would have gotten $26 million in property taxes. They're not asking for any property tax exemptions. Electricity taxes. The power folks guaranteed us, and I saw their contracts, it said they will not raise rates on what they call legacy consumers, which are all of us. They will not shut our power off. It's all in the legal contracts that they have, all the way from East River Electric to Basin Electric in North Dakota. When he talks about the pipeline, I voted for the CO2 pipeline. I made no bones about it. That's how I voted, and I would have voted for a data center. I think that Beetle County or Huron is setting a great example. We have a new beef processing plant that we're using the TIF for. We're trying to bring businesses to town. We're bringing a hotel to town. If we're not growing, the phrase is you're dying, and that's true. If we don't get businesses, we're not gonna bring young people to the county, the state, and we're gonna start losing all of our young people. And if we lose our young people, when we're all gone, there won't be anybody to replace us, which is a terrible thought for the future. We need to develop the economics of our state so we can progress instead of regress, and support our state, our cities, our counties. So economic development is huge to me.
Thank you for the question, Rich. I think that economic development is important, but I don't think that we should be people that are going to frivolously climb aboard something before we know exactly if it's built on solid ground or not. I've been watching also the data centers and their investments, and they keep going down and they keep floating each other money. And so I'm not sure that that's something that we want to give free sales and use tax to. There's several of us in here that have probably owned businesses that, or are owning a business currently that don't have free sales and use tax. And so I hate to think that out of desperation we would offer that to some other company that we don't know. Case in point, we all were so excited in Clark when The French fry factory went out of business, but then it was going to be a dog treat factory. And they brought in some workforce and so on and so forth, and pretty soon it just kind of trickled down, faded out. And then about, every 6 months, they'd send in maybe 20, 30 people to do what I call this shell of an operation. And then they said they couldn't get the product in order to do the manufacture with it. And after a while, we did a lot of reading, and it was a guy out of Denver, and he was in trouble there, had violated some of their clean air and water standards and so on, and it fell by the wayside. And they're sat empty. I think there was a seed company in Redfield too that came in and they painted blue sky, and all of a sudden they took off. So we have to be careful what we promote for economic development. We cannot get on that cart right away until we see how this is all going to come to pass. And I still firmly believe that these data centers, that there's going to be some type of a different fashion for them. We see so many things that are, like Starlink, for example, up in the air. I think that there's going to be, I think after a while people are just going to see these as white elephants. So I don't know. I don't want to lead the band on that one. If they want to pay their way, I'm not against data centers, but let them have all the liability. And as far as the tax going back to Toronto or Clear Lake, we all know that that's not going to be true. If it looks like it's making money, the state's going to say, oh, let's go put that in a general fund somehow, some way, and call it a teacher raise. So that's where I stand with it. But certainly we need to do more delving in, more investigating before we are quick to jump on board for something that later on we'll say, well, that didn't work, because I don't want to be one of those people. Thank you.
Thank you. We are coming close to the end of an hour, so I'm going to declare time. We will give each of the legislators a couple minutes to make some closing remarks this morning, and we will begin with Representative Van Diepen.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today, asking questions. After a month off, it's kind of nice to get back into the swing of things before we head back to Pier. Our next step is actually probably the most challenging. Being here and speaking with you folks is the easy part. But once again, we all have to start campaigning again. We're all up for election again this fall, and we're hoping that what we do shows you that we truly care about our area. We care about the economic development, to the education, to every part of it, and we all work together to do it. So all I can do is ask for your support. It sounds like we may not have a primary for Representative Greenfield or Senator Whip, the three of us, but we do have a general election for Representative Greenfield and myself, and we hope that you can support us come November, and we'll keep fighting the fight and doing what we can for Beale County, Spink County, and Clark County. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Greenfield.
Well, thank you. And again, I echo the comments. Thank you so much for being here and taking an interest. And when I first heard that we were going to do this on March 28th after the regular session, I thought, well, what are we going to talk about? And then I thought, well, if there's one thing I like to do, I like to talk sometimes. So we'll probably get through this. We can cover an hour. I'm sure we can. But anyway, in all seriousness, as Representative Van Diepen said, we all will be running again. I think we've been a pretty solid team. I think that we've worked very hard for this area and for our state. We have promoted stability where sometimes there is none. We've promoted election integrity. We've promoted some way to get around and ease burdens in some areas for property taxes. And education, for sure. We have done some things. Do we always get things right? No. But the fact is, as we keep trying to do what we think is best for the people. I think I can affirm that what we're doing is service. We're not here to say, well, I'm only gonna be in the legislature for a couple of years and then I'm gonna run for US House or anything like that. We're not climbers. We're just citizen legislators, and I say that because that's not everyone. No, but I think we have a good, solid team that's here to work for people, and we can all talk to each other. And by the way, we work across the aisle. Representative Whiff did or Senator Whiff, I'm sorry for the demotion. Senator Whiff worked very well with my friend Katie Whitman, and she is a Democrat. And we don't have those types of, conversations that are negative with the Democrats. We try to work with them, and they try to work and support us. And, there are a few people that like to make their voices heard, and they belong to outside groups. And those outside groups have platforms that don't match our platforms because we represent the state and not some other outside group. So, thank you.
Senator?
Thank you. Well, I'm very proud of the job that we did, all three of us this year. And you can go on the legislature's website and right down to the vote, you can see what we did. And I know that if you reach out to me, or we will explain to you exactly what we were thinking that day, or what's the information that maybe isn't immediately clear in that news headline, the things that we have to find out about and vote based on. But I'm very proud of the job we did. I know I never, and I think they'll agree, I never took a vote that I thought, well, this is just the politically smart thing to do. And Representative Greenfield said it. We are not the climbing type of people. This is a chapter, I think, in our lives, and we want to serve as long as the people will have us here. But we're not making a political calculation. We're trying to do what's best for our district, for the state. Thanks for coming today and to these meetings. These have been a real pleasure, the questions that you guys have brought. I get to brag to my colleagues across the state about what a great district we have and how thoughtful people are here, and they're still interested in investing in the future, and they're still, this is the kind of community I'm very proud to represent in Pierre. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity. As Representative Van Diepen said, we will be running for election in my case. It's my first time doing it, so I'm not sure what I'm in for. But I hope that we've all made the case to the community that we have your best interests in mind, and we're here to learn from you and listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's show our appreciation. As usual, I have several items, announcements, but before announcements, the Governmental Affairs Committee is interested in whether you have an opinion on the format we used this year by having 2 sessions during the legislative session and then this one today at the conclusion, or whether you prefer having all 3 sessions during the legislative session. So I'm going to ask for a show of hands on each item. Do you prefer the way we did it this year by having the last one today? How many people in the audience prefer doing it that way? Okay, that looks like a majority, so I guess I don't even have anybody want to raise their hand that you prefer having all 3 sessions during the legislative session? Okay, there's a couple of hands, but just for the committee's perspective. Now, I have 4 announcements. State of the County Luncheon will be on April 9th at noon at the Crossroads, where the county government reports on their activities for the last year and their plans. If you'd like to attend at the Huron Event Center, please call the Chamber office 352-0000 so that we can make arrangements for enough lunches for everybody. There will, we think, be some election on the first Tuesday in June. We have county commission, we have school board, we have county offices up for primary election. So our committee will hold some election forums where you get an opportunity to question the candidates in those races, and those will be held during the month of May, and we will let you know when we get to the deadline here as far as how many of those forums we need to have, either on a Saturday morning or on some evening. You can look at the calendar events for Huron and all the activities at HuronSD.com to keep up to date, or you can also sign up for a monthly newsletter at HuronSD.com and get notices of what's going on in Huron at that site. With that, I want to thank the questioners today for some excellent questions, and I want to thank all of you for coming and showing an interest in state government. John?
I was just wondering, why did the format go to 3 instead? Used to be 3 during the sessions rather than every Saturday? Was it just too much for you? I mean, that's a lot of time. You're already spending a lot of time out here, and I understand. Was this just too much to continue with the weekly sessions? You know, now we do.
Anybody want to comment on that?
I just, and I can understand.
We never did weekly sessions. We never did weekly.
It sure seemed like it.
I think you would get tired of me every weekend.
No, it seemed like we could keep up with the issues
Mhm.
so much better.
They have other communities they have to talk into, like.
Yeah, we do Clark and we do Redfield
Okay.
and other facilities or other meetings that we have. Usually we have something going on the weekends, so that's why it works out so well when the chamber lets us know the dates and we plug it into our calendar so we don't schedule something else on that date.
Good, thank you.
If we had so many questions, we couldn't fit them all in, and it was bleeding over into the next hour, I'd certainly say, let's beef this up and make sure. But this year, I don't think we had that here. We filled the hour, but it seemed adequate. So for now, from my perspective, I'm happy with the amount of time.
No, it's
But thank you for that.
We can't encompass the whole week maybe, but we do put out articles in the paper, and stuff, so you're able to kind of keep up with what goes on throughout the week.
Thank you and have a great day.